Good morning, YouTube. I wanted to do a quick video this morning on my take on crankcase heaters. Yesterday evening on one of the Facebook groups, there was a question posed, is a crankcase heater always required on a heat pump? And majority of the people said yes, it is. A person or two said no, not always. They said they'd play the devil's advocate and say that. And the comments got nasty to the point that Zach had to delete the whole post. Now, as far as I'm concerned, is a crankcase heater a good idea on a heat pump? Always. It is always a good idea. However, if you go out here and buy a manufacturer's heat pump and install it, many cases it will not have a crankcase heater on it, especially the smaller capacity units. My manufacturer, at least on the 13 SEER, I think the 14 SEER, a crankcase heater was only included on the 3.5 and up ton units. The 3 down to the 1.5 ton units did not have a crankcase heater factory installed. It's available as a kit to put on it, but it does not come that way from the factory. Now, these folks are warranting these compressors for either 5 years or 10 years. So I went on a factory tour last year, and part of that factory tour was a day at the corporate offices, meeting with everything from salespeople to engineers to plant managers. And I asked the question about the crankcase heaters. Why is it included on some and not on others? And the engineer said it was basically a function of capacity, how much refrigerant is in this particular system. So here I have Copeland's application engineering bulletin on the screen, and this would be if you were going to build your own heat pump and wanted to put a Copeland compressor in it, this would probably be required reading. So you have a lot of information in this document, but what we're concerned with today is basically crankcase heaters. It says if the system charge is less than the system charge limit, it's recommended. If it's greater than the system charge limit, then it's required. We use the words recommended and required. So, and it says that it's referred to table 4, which will be all the way near the bottom of this document. Refrigerant charge limit. Okay, a 10 through 31 compressor has a compressor charge limit of 8 pounds of refrigerant. If it's over 9.6 pounds, then you have to install a crankcase heater. Okay, here's the same document for the R22, the ZR scroll compressors. And if we jump down to the crankcase heater, there we go. It says a crankcase heater is recommended on single phase compressor when the system charge is over the charge limit shown in table 4. Again, it says recommended. A crankcase heater is required for systems containing more than 120% of the refrigerant charge listed in table 4. So they worded that a little bit differently. Actually, I think it's more clear, but if we go to 4, we see the 16 through 32 and the ZR compressors, which has a frame size of 53, 5.5 inches diameter, 8 pounds or 9.6 pounds. Recommended over 8 pounds, required over 9.6. The 38s through 54s has a larger diameter body. Charge limit's 10 pounds. 120% of that's 12 pounds. So a crankcase heater would be recommended over 10-pound charge and a required over 12 pounds of charge in this larger compressor. Okay, now we're looking at a technical data sheet on one of my Aries heat pumps. And the refrigerant charge ranges from 106 ounces for the 1.5 ton up to 210 ounces for the 5 ton. That's the factory charge for 15 foot of line set. So everything 3.5 ton and larger has more than 8 pounds of refrigerant, so that seems to be their rule of thumb they used in deciding what got a crankcase heater at the factory and what didn't. If we scroll down to the bottom where they list a few options available for these units. Whoa. So as you can see, the smaller units, 18 through 36, has a kit available, but it's not factory installed. The 3.5 through 5 ton units come with a crankcase heater. Again, the manufacturer is going to warranty these compressors for either 5 or 10 years. So if they feel good about it, I'm going to feel good about it. If I put in a small, actually a 1.5 ton unit that had a long line set, greater than 50 foot. So I ordered a heater, popped the top off that sucker, took the blanket off, put the heater on, put it back together. Took 25 minutes by the time I did everything, but I feel better about the system. In fact, I think anything over 50 foot, this manufacturer is going to require you to put a crankcase heater on. I've got a lot of 3 ton units out there that's got 15 foot line sets with no crankcase heaters. So far, so good. Again, is it a good idea? Yes. Is it required? Not according to the people that make the units. So I guess it's kind of like the TXV piston argument. I think somebody put a comment on one of John Israel's video one time that he was doing it wrong because you couldn't have a 14 SEER air conditioner with a piston. Well, that's just flat out false. You can have a 14 SEER with a piston. Manufacturers do it all the time. TXVs are good. They give you more efficiency over a wider range of temperatures. However, the pistons are good too. They never fail. I've seen them stopped up, but that's not the piston's fault. But TXVs, eventually the power head loses some charge and the thing doesn't open as far as it should, and you start decreasing your capacity, and eventually it completely fails and sometimes takes the compressor with it. So there's no right or wrong in this stuff. There's just, everything's gray when it comes to heat pumps. So didn't want to make anybody mad. I just had this on my mind all night after seeing some of the comments on the post, so I wanted to put this out here. Comment, you know, again, I'm not saying I don't think we ought to have crankcase heaters, because I do. What I am saying is some manufacturers don't think they have to have one, with Allied Air here being one of them. And so we just can't make blanket statements all the time. You all have a great day, and thanks for watching.